They were cold, starving, outnumbered, and surrounded by 200,000 German troops. But the 101st Airborne didn't retreat. They tightened their helmets and said one word: nuts. This is the real story of Bastogne. December 1944. Europe froze under a brutal winter that turned roads to ice and forests into graveyards of silence. Hitler, desperate for one last victory, launched a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, a place Allied intelligence believed impossible for a large-scale attack. But the German war machine moved like a steel serpent across the snow, crushing American lines, capturing towns, and threatening to split the Allied front in two. In the chaos, one unit stood directly in the path of the storm, the 101st Airborne Division. Still recovering from Operation Market Garden, low on supplies, tired and under strength, they were ordered to move out. Trucks rushed them into the frozen forest where destiny waited. They had no winter gear, no time to prepare, and no margin for defeat. This wasn't a battle, this was a trap. But the men of the 101st would turn that trap into legend. The crossroads town of Bastogne was the beating heart of the German offensive. Whoever controlled it controlled the entire Ardennes. The 101st Airborne arrived first, digging foxholes into frozen earth so hard they had to use TNT to break it. Snow piled knee-deep. Ammunition was dangerously low. Medical supplies? Almost none. And the German army was closing fast. 6 divisions worth of tanks, infantry, and artillery. Yet, under the command of Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, the paratroopers prepared to hold the town at all costs. Chaplains offered last-minute blessings. Medics prepared makeshift aid stations using doors and blankets, and soldiers wrapped their frozen feet in burlap sacks. When the first German shells slammed into Bastogne, the sky turned black, snow mixed with fire, and the 101st Airborne understood that the Battle of the Bulge had truly begun. Within days, Bastogne was completely surrounded. German panzers sealed every road. The sky was too cloudy for Allied planes, trapping the 101st with no way out. Artillery pounded American positions day and night. Foxholes collapsed from concussions. Soldiers rationed food to a few bites per day. Frostbite spread like infection. Yet every line held. The paratroopers fought from tree lines, smashed tank treads with bazookas, and ambushed patrols in the dark. Medics worked miracles, often using dirty bandages because clean ones were gone. Still, the morale remained iron strong. Commanders walked the lines daily, cracked jokes, lifted spirits, and reminded the men that Bastogne was more than a town. It was the hinge on which the entire war now turned. If the 101st fell, Germany would break through. If they stood, the Allies would win Europe. Nuts! On December 22nd, the German commander sent a formal demand for surrender. The message was direct. Bastogne was surrounded, resistance was pointless, and the Americans would be destroyed if they refused terms. General McAuliffe read the note, laughed, and scribbled a single word in reply: nuts! The message was delivered to the Germans with a smile. At first confused, they quickly understood its meaning. We're not surrendering anything. The word spread through American foxholes like wildfire, lifting spirits and hardening resolve. Soldiers carved nuts on helmets, wrote it on ammo boxes, and shouted it during firefights. It became a battle cry, a symbol of defiance in the face of annihilation. The Germans attacked harder. The Americans fought back harder still. Night battles in the pines. The forests around Bastogne became arenas of death. German tanks pushed through the trees, their engines growling like beasts in the night. Soldiers of the 506th and 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiments dug in behind fallen logs and tree stumps, firing at silhouettes that emerged through fog and snowfall. Machine guns froze. Rifles jammed. Soldiers warmed magazines under their armpits. Mortar rounds detonated in snow, launching white plumes like geysers. It was savage combat, close, chaotic, and relentless. Many paratroopers fought wearing only thin jackets and torn gloves, but their discipline never faltered. On Christmas Eve, the Germans launched their largest night attack to break the American line. The sky lit with tracers like exploding stars. The ground shook under tank fire, but when dawn came, the 101st Airborne still held every inch of Bastogne. The true heroes of Bastogne weren't just the men fighting outside the foxholes, but also those working inside the makeshift hospitals. The medics, nurses, and surgeons who performed operations without heat, light, or anesthesia. They used kitchen knives for surgery, tore bed sheets into bandages, and heated plasma with candles. The wounded filled basements, lying on straw, shivering from cold and blood loss. Yet they held on because morale came from the medics' quiet strength. One nurse later recalled, "The bombs shook the walls, the lights went out, but the boys still smiled. They kept telling me they had to get back to their buddies." The medical teams embodied the spirit of the 101st, refusing to give up even when the world collapsed around them. Far to the south, General George S. Patton was executing one of the most audacious maneuvers of the war. In 48 hours, he turned his entire Third Army north, a logistical miracle military historians still marvel at. Through snowstorms, frozen roads, and German ambushes, his tanks pushed relentlessly toward Bastogne. Patton knew the 101st could only hold so long. Supplies were nearly exhausted. Ammunition was running out. The wounded stacked in corners. Every hour mattered. Finally, on December 26th, Patton's armored column smashed through German lines and reached the outskirts of Bastogne. The siege was broken. The iron wolves of Bastogne, exhausted, frozen, and bloodied, refused evacuation. They simply tightened their gear and prepared for the next fight. With reinforcements and resupply now flowing in, the Americans launched counterattacks to push the Germans back. The morale shift was instant. The hunters had become the hunted. German forces, previously confident, now struggled to hold ground. The frozen forest echoed with the crack of American rifles, the roar of Sherman tanks, and the thunder of artillery. Day by day, the Bulge shrank. Bastogne became not just a point of defense, but a launching ground for Allied victory. As the winter eased slightly, the 101st Airborne marched forward, battered but unbroken, proving their spirit was stronger than the cold, hunger, and enemy that had surrounded them. Victory came at a terrible cost. Thousands of soldiers died in the Ardennes. Entire towns were obliterated. The 101st Airborne suffered heavy casualties. Frostbite, wounds, and shell shock haunted many for the rest of their lives. But those who survived carried a pride that could never be taken away. They had held Bastogne when the world thought they would fall. They had stared down Hitler's final offensive and refused to break. And they had done it with one word that echoed through history: nuts. Bastogne became a symbol of American grit, courage, and refusal to surrender even when surrounded by darkness. The Battle of Bastogne cemented the 101st Airborne as one of the most legendary fighting forces in American history. The men who fought in the snow-covered forests became icons, not because they were the strongest or the best equipped, but because they held the line when no one else could. Their victory helped ensure the end of Nazi Germany and reshaped the world. Today, Bastogne stands as sacred ground, a reminder that courage can bloom even in the dead of winter. The Iron Wolves of Bastogne didn't just stop Hitler's last gamble. They proved that the American spirit, when pushed to the brink, becomes unbreakable,